Looks like Ben's ready, so everyone ready to start? Okay. Welcome to the City Council work meeting for February 5th, 2024. Mayor Marr will be absent this evening, so I will be chairing the meeting. Let's begin with a roll call. Council members Gearbaugh.
Here.
Seo.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Lesh.
Here.
Harmont. Here. And Mayor Marr will be absent. From staff, City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Police Chief Raznick, and DPW's Director Searles, and, we do have Clerk Royal, excuse me. So moving on, we need a motion to approve the agenda, either as submitted or if anyone has amendments.
Moved as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. A second?
Second.
Mr. Gearbaugh. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We need a motion now to excuse the absence of Mayor Marl.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lash. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time and make a comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state their name for the record. And just for clarification, that during work meetings, we only do one public comment, which is at this time. Any public comments? None from the audience? Clerk Royal, did you receive any comments? Okay. So none. So moving forward to our only discussion item, which is the special event applications. City Manager O'Toole, would you like to kick it off?
Absolutely. At our last regular meeting, there was a request for additional information from some of our department heads, so I've assembled our dream team here to respond to any and all questions that might be outstanding. I'll just remind you again, it is my recommendation, certainly if you feel that any events aren't thought out enough or don't have enough detail, to delay those but move forward with at least approving the ones that are finalized. So at this time, I'm happy to turn it over to you all for questions.
Thank you. Do we want to go event by event, or do you want to look holistically at them for general questions?
I think there will probably be just a couple events that emerge as top questions, so why don't we just go holistically, anyone who has questions?
Okay. So we'll start to my left with Councilmember Harmont.
I don't have any questions. I think that this is a good thing to be waiving fees, and, or we would have to be paying a third party, and I didn't see anything that looked out of place, so no questions.
Thank you. Ms. Rice?
No, I appreciate all of the additional context to this. A lot of the hesitation stemmed from not having the full scope of the events. We have a form that goes in with each event application packet for folks to sign off on, and the more that we make that standard and the more that we have this kind of information with this cover letter standard, I think we'll be able to breeze through this in a more timely manner each year. My initial view of all of these, it looks like a lot of the questions pertaining to, updates from previous years have been addressed, and additional things that we had pointed out. So I just want to thank the staff for taking that additional time, and again, just reiterate that that's really what council is asking for, is just as much detail as possible. That way we know the scope of things and what the city is being asked to do from a, police standpoint or DPW standpoint. That way we can really look holistically at how much money we're spending as a city to help waive these fees and to help put on these events. I do agree that it is very important for us as a city to have events like this. A lot of cities spend a lot of money on their events, and I realize that we are asking a lot from our taxpayers right now, but I do not think that taking away from city events, things that promote business in the city, that promote community, is something that we should peck at, in the short term or the long term. So I appreciate all this information, and that's really all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Just a couple issues. For me, I'm hesitant to move this forward with the Saline Pride event because there's no clear support of where the funding's coming from, what that all entails. Again, we also have the flag raising event that's not on here. From my perspective, I'd like to see how that could actually be combined. I feel that until we know better, closing down the parking lot uptown doesn't seem like that would be the most beneficial for the community or the downtown members. While it is an event that I will support, we run into this problem with the Celtic Festival where a lot of costs came and got on the city's back instead of being provided by the ones that are actually supporting it or putting it on. And I want to make sure that we as a community are not stepping into another possible loophole. And the other piece of it is I like the idea of having it here at City Hall because, one, not only do we have public restrooms that can be used, we have the safety, we have the police that's local and close because these events can get to be a concern. Also, we have grass that we can put tables on. There's more shade. It just seems like a better location, but that's my personal opinion. But I also like the idea that we as a city are clearly showing that we support it from our civic point. The other question I have, and Ms. Dillon pointed this out to me too as I was reading this, the $400 cost for the Memorial Day tent, I was under the impression that was going to be covered by a potential sponsor.
Going to attempt that, yes.
Okay.
And
You're going to need to use a
It- it's
microphone,
gonna
I'm
be-
sorry. Mr. Searles, can you use the microphone?
I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that's going to be a canopy, not a tent. It's not going to have walls that obstruct in and out and views.
That's primarily, again, just for the speakers or whatever.
It's for the attendees if they're looking for shade.
Because I know when we had a lot of trees, back 50 years ago, we never had tents. I know,
Right.
growing up, I've seen all those trees gone, and that's another issue that I want to see put back in the cemetery. But if $400 is what it's going to take to protect some people from the heat, that's fine. Other than that, I'm fine with presenting all these. I mean, Jazz in the Park, of course, is a newer event, but they clearly had all their funding. They had everything in a row. I liked how they presented it. We didn't end up covering any costs that I am aware of. And that's kind of my concern. We need to make sure we've got a good record before we start committing a lot of resources and things to each one of these events. So other than that, that's my comments for now.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Seal?
I have nothing.
That was quick. Councilmember Lesh?
The only thing I wanted to mention was on that form that we have now for the groups to fill out, there's that whole issue about mosquito control, and that got the Arts and Culture Committee into quite a tizzy anyway, so I'm not sure if we can put some way of clarifying that on the form for future use.
Sure, yeah, we can certainly delineate that. One of the things we've also talked about internally is whether, now that we have better processes for how our committees and commissions are submitting budget requests, really those events should be identified as part of the budgeting process. So you should be seeing them and sort of pseudo-approving them a lot earlier in those cases. So it may look a little different next year for the events that are specific to our committees and commissions.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. I do have a few questions, and then we'll circle back because I think Mr. Gearbaugh has something else. So just, Mr. Searles, just for clarification on the canopy, not tent. So it is for all use, it's, because I think I had envisioned that it was behind the podium for sort of the dignitaries that are there. You're saying it's more for a spectator event. And so are there going to be chairs, or is it just a tent in which people can seek shelter?
It's just going to be a canopy for shade.
Okay,
Or maybe if it rains.
okay. And it will not be on the roadway that's on the side?
No.
There, or anything like that? Okay. Just making sure that the band can still get through as well as all the people marching in. So I appreciate that. And the cost for it is just something that the city, we are going to, it's a rental, you've explained to me, versus a purchase, that it's more
Yes.
cost-effective.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. As Mr. Gearbaugh had said, I do have the same concerns about the Pride event. I don't feel as though it's sort of formed itself yet. I think that there is an opportunity for them to come back at some point once we have a better understanding of what that is and whether closing down the parking lot is the best place for it at this point. The other issue I wanted to ask about was that for the summer music series, there was a notation that said, as long as it's not on any public roads, I don't have any concerns. I'm not sure who wrote that note. Was that your note?
That was, excuse me, yes, but that was based on something that we had a discussion about previously that I guess is not an issue anymore. So
Okay. So we are saying with certainty that the summer music series will be in the parking lot? Is that?
That's the application.
yes,
Yep.
we had to do more with the run.
Okay. Okay.
And we are closing a portion of Harris Street for that run.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure, there's been talk back and forth about rolling roadblocks versus just closing the road down. So I just wanted to make sure, I prefer that the road get closed instead of having a patrol car following.
Okay.
I think we're confusing Summerfest and summer music. Yes?
Yes,
Yes.
this is related to the 5K that's a part of Summerfest.
But I'm talking about the summer music series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
And
think
so
it's-
the note had said, as long as it's not run, it wasn't run, as long as the run isn't on public roads. That's why I guess I wasn't sure where that comment had come from. So that's okay. So that's for Summerfest. Fantastic. And then the majority, when I looked at the fees, obviously for the police department, the majority of your costs are because it's overtime, and that's based on, because they're holidays, correct? Okay. I assume that was the case. And then I think Mr. Harrington was able to clarify that one issue of, that there were multiple
Yeah.
permit fees and such, and so everyone knows what they have to do as far as that is concerned. And then with the events that are going to have food trucks, do we require any kind of inspection, not of the food truck, but the placement and making sure there aren't generators in areas where they shouldn't be, or?
So they do have to submit a plan for the location of the food truck, and that gets approved as part of our food truck applications.
Okay. Because I
And
know
I
that,
believe some changes were made to the Jazz Fest layout as a result of that.
Right, because
The parks have already made certain locations that they have pre-approved, and the Jazz in the Park was not going to use that, but once they found out that it was going to cause some issues, they did move those over to where they're allowed.
okay, fantastic, I appreciate that. And my only other question is just sort of an administrative one, was that on the prior draft of the chart, there was an application fee. Did we remove that? Because it's not on the new chart.
Well, we're not waiving that, but we do charge the administrative fee. So I took that off, because this was all waived fees.
Okay, that was what I,
Yeah.
yep. So that is separate, no matter what the event is?
Correct.
Every event has to pay the $100
Unless it's a
administrative fee?
city.
Unless it's a city event.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for answering my questions. I can circle back and see if anything has come about, Ms.
Yeah.
Harmon?
Yeah, thank you for that. I do want to, I noticed that there, in the comments, it talks about the recycling and trash guidelines, and the answer is that, are we going to be supporting the recycling and trash guidelines? And the response was to Chamber of Commerce, Main Street, and Summerfest. Will we also be including the Jazz in the Park and all events as part of those guidelines?
I requested response from everybody. Those are the ones that I have received as of today. So I will reach out to them again. Some of them still have to submit insurances because they expire between now and the day of the event, so we'll get new ones. So as it gets closer, I will continue to ask for the items that are still outstanding.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Rice?
I'd like to talk about the Saline Pride event in a little bit more detail if we could. We do have two members of the DEI committee here, our treasurer, Ms. Cole, and the Saline Main Street director, Mary Detling. I guess where I'm a little perplexed is why we're picking that event when they've designated that it's a Saline Supports. They're going to donate to this event. That's a 501c3. Yes, DEI is co-sponsoring it, so it's city co-sponsored. But really all they're asking for is use of the parking lot, from what I understand. So I have a couple of questions for, I think, we'll start with maybe Mary, because Mary, you were writer on this event application, correct? You helped with it. Can you give us a little bit more of an overview of what exactly you are planning to do, and like any reassurances that there won't be any additional needs from the city other than shutting down the parking lot and whatever has been designated already?
Okay, I can tell you what I have so far. On now. Good. Okay, so I can tell you what we have planned so far. So to be honest with you, the DEI committee has changed in terms of leadership and whatnot, so, which I know you're aware of. But we are trying to establish just an open space for people to come and for there to be entertainment, whether it be a live band and possibly a drag review, a family-friendly drag review, mind you. That's something that we're discussing and hoping to have. That's why we wanted to have the stage in a parking lot as well, so just to have more open space. So this would be separate too from the flag raising, so this is why the application is specifically for closing that parking lot for that evening. Yeah, so we haven't yet met with Saline Supports to kind of flesh out all of the things, but that is happening. I have been in touch with Kirsten, and we are meeting next week to kind of talk about that and what that's going to look like.
And the
So-
precipice for this is basically, it just outgrew the space at Tempt Park, correct?
we wanted to do something more than just the picnic that happens at the park. So, yeah, we wanted to do something more downtown and that can involve more people, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks for that info. I think, from my personal perspective, I'm now the council representative for DEI. We've had one meeting so far, and then I've had some side meetings with folks as well to kind of get up to speed on what's been going on. From my perspective, like I said, this is going to take the place of the Saline Pride Picnic, which had been previously held at Tufts Park for a few years. By asking for space in the parking lot, it not only gives more space, but it also brings it downtown so that folks can attend businesses. Businesses can also play off of this, have their own events. They can have specials at their events, things like that, within their stores and restaurants. So I fully support moving this downtown. I understand the hesitancy of wanting to know more detail, but I also understand that the details aren't quite there yet.
Correct.
So
Understand that.
where I stand on this is, Saline Pride can always come back and say, hey, after we've looked at all this, we really actually do need some police support, or we do need some DPW support. And they can bring it back to council and say to us, we've updated what we're
Yes.
looking to do.
Also, if I may interrupt, traditionally, Pride is an event that tends to be police-free. Because it was actually it began as a protest against police actions towards the LGBTQ society in that time. I know that that's not always the case now, and now that we're more worried about protesters instead of police presence at things like that, but it still tends to be more. We tend to not try to have police presence there. And there won't be any alcohol or anything like that being served at this event. It'll just be entertainment, so.
I think that's a really great point. I appreciate that point, and I truly believe that that's a really important point to this as well. And again, no alcohol being served at the event, and, it's family-friendly.
Absolutely.
I don't see a lot of disruption here, but again, I would encourage, should we approve this today, that if additional things are needed, you can bring them back and request them. I have no hesitation that this is going to somehow slip through the cracks and cost the city more money, because there are multiple people on the DEI committee, including our treasurer, who's very keen on what's going to cost the city money. So I appreciate that additional info. I look forward to helping to plan, as well as continuing to update my council staff or my council colleagues on how that event is panning out.
All right, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Mary.
Yeah.
That's all I have, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Gearbo?
Following up on that,
Okay.
and Mary, if you're there, who'll be covering the cost of the porta-johns? We no longer support that cost.
Right, that is something that we're still working out the details on.
Those are the issues that I'm having, is that those
Yes.
numbers start to regulate up, and if you're not meeting until next week, we would then basically have March to consider it again. There's just not enough pieces, and I'm going to continue to reiterate this, to show what is the commitment from the city. Being a member of the LGBTQ community, I am very concerned about safety and the reactions that have happened in the last few months regarding even things that have happened at the schools and whatever. That's one of my concerns. But the other issue is, we've seen a lot of money go through the DEI. We have a lot of inventory and a lot of other things that are sitting in our closets that have gone nowhere. And our treasurer has been very astute of making sure costs and things are handled. So that's why I want to make sure that we have a very small, minimal budget right now for the DEI. And if Saline Support wants to support it, and they're a 501c3, they should be able to guarantee what they're going to cover, just like any other aspect. So giving you guys additional time to do that will make me feel a lot more comfortable. I think that's my biggest concern right now. So I also understood you're not going to be doing the fourth Friday, so this is going to replace that?
This was originally planned on the fourth Friday of June to coincide, but downtown has decided to sort of back off of fourth Fridays for the moment. So whether or not we come up with a replacement, that is up to the downtown business owners and property owners group that will be meeting, I think, in a couple weeks.
So this clearly would be a separate event that you...
Separate event, then, yes, so,
All right, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Gearba.
Oh, I do have one other question, sorry. When we mentioned about Porta-Johns. So those are clearly no longer being supported by the city, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we don't pay any costs associated with that.
Because I'm looking at, last year we had a significant overrun, but I mean, that was related more to DPW time. Although it seems that we're gone up almost $2,000 this year and anticipated for, never mind, actual, it went over $2,000 greater than it was in 2022. Any reason why we would have had that much more? Was it because of adding new events?
The only new event that was added last year was Jazz in the Park, and that wasn't a big,
There was a inflationary add to that. So we did not want to, we had different wages, we have different costs for the materials and stuff that we have to provide. So there was about a 10% escalator to make sure that we're not giving you a number lower than reality.
Just looking at it, I know it's like $4,000 more expense in '23 over 2022, just incrementally. I'm trying to understand, is that going to be another hit for this coming year? And you don't believe so?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
All set, Mr. Gearba?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Seal?
I have nothing.
Mr. Lesh?
I have nothing.
Thank you. I do have one last question, and it is for Mr. Searles. There was a comment regarding trunk or treat that the city may provide additional lighting.
We'll help try to get some lighting. We don't own additional lighting.
And-
We do not own, DTE actually has brought in for our Christmas parade in the past, some light towers. We've been in some conversation with their community lighting person to see if we can get them to help pitch in for this event if we need it.
Okay, just to clarify, because it does say in here, DPW may provide additional lighting if needed. I just don't want to obligate the city towards that.
I think may provide would be, we are going to try to help get secure lighting.
Okay, at no cost to the city.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or from the dais? Well, at this time, we do have some of our chairs from committees here. I would love to open up the floor to you if you have comments, questions, anything that you'd like to say. Don't all rush up at once.
Paul Heineck from Summerfest. Not on our application, but today we did a go for a juried art fair that would happen during Summerfest. We have space on our application. It will fit within our framework. Joanne Dance from White Pine Studios and Jen McPherson are coordinating it. So they were green-lighted this morning. We're going to see how it goes the next month. So we're excited about that new event coming to Summerfest.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Lisa Bazzi. I am with the Saline Area Chamber of Commerce. I just, looking at all the events, and Saline does have a lot of good events, I just want to say thank you, and thank your teams here too. This is what makes Saline wonderful with these events, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
And just one more thing, I do want to express my gratitude in the extent that you look into these things, and I know that with Pride especially, it is a brand-new idea for us, and it is taking some fleshing out, so that is just where we happen to be right now, but I do appreciate all of your diligence in looking into these things and getting these questions answered, so thank you.
Thank you very much. So any more comments or anything from staff?
Mayor, I just have one other
Mr. Gilbert?
comment. You remember, we were talking earlier about as long as the run isn't on public roads, I have no concerns. Where exactly is it going to be run? Is it going to be in the park?
That was totally misunderstood. So,
It's also on the wrong event sheet.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's,
yes, correct.
But no, I know sometimes we've had it where they run it on the sidewalk and it's still an issue because you can't get across the street. So I wanted to make sure that
Right, no.
that was still addressed.
Some of it will be in the roadway, some of it will be in the park. It was more of a conversation about the hard roadblocks versus one year we tried it without the hard roadblocks with street closures, and it, in my opinion, wasn't safe. So I just didn't want to go down that path again.
And we're going to continue to proceed with the same closures like we did this past year where movable briquet, or whatever we can do in order to get to the streets and
Yes.
nobody in the streets.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
thank you. Ms. Rice?
Just one more thing, Chief Radzik, while we have you here. So you heard Mary's point of view from a DEI perspective, in referencing, the Stonewall riots and why police presence isn't necessarily something that we want to have at a Pride event. However, I agree with my colleague, Mr. Gearbaugh, that safety is always our number one priority. You'll hear that from me over and over and over again. As the chief of police, do you have any, ideas, and maybe this isn't even a conversation to have right now, but maybe something to think about over the next couple of months as we approve this event and as details come out, of a way to ensure safety without having necessarily a presence, surrounding the event?
Well, this isn't the first one. I think when
Can
I
you
was.
use the microphone? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
I'm getting the signal.
When I came on as the deputy chief, I believe that was the first time we had the flag raising ceremony. Talking with the organizers, it was clear, and I understand why they don't want uniformed police officers there. So I was there in plain clothes, and I spoke with the organizers, and when they had the events that were not here at City Hall, I just stressed, if there's a problem, then call us, we're gonna show up. I did have, obviously, some directed patrols to just, drive down to where some of these events were, just to make sure we didn't have a gathering of, any protesters or anything like that, and it seemed to run fine, so.
I appreciate that. And I think, again, it's just one of those things where if we just stress continued communication between groups and let people know what's going on, I feel comfortable that we're a small enough city with a big enough presence that, we
And if
can
things like
maintain
that are gonna happen, we usually kind of know before. I mean, there's chatter on Facebook or whatnot, and we monitor that prior to these events, so.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your openness that we can have these events and that you can appreciate why people need what they need from these events. So, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Before we close up, last call. Okay. Anybody from the audience? Well, then, I think we are done with the topic, so we should be able to close out our meeting. We just need to do a motion to adjourn.
So moved. At 6.
I'll second.
6:34.
6:34, okay, and with Mr. CO. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned, and we will start our regular meeting at 7 o'clock.
Terry, you good? Colleen, you good? Yep. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening. Members present tonight are Council Members Gearboss, CO, Rice, Lesh, Harmont, Mayor Pro Tem, and Mayor Morrow. From City staff, we have City Manager O'Toole, Clerk Royal, Police Chief Radzik, and Community Development Director Harrington is absent this evening. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
Moved as submitted.
I'll let Gearboss be the mover and CO be the second. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we'll proceed to the first of two public comment periods. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required, to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items this evening? The record will reflect there are none from those in the audience. Clerk Royal, did we receive any written communication in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? Easy enough. Then we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Moved as submitted.
Moved by CO to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Seconded by Harmount. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We come to unfinished business. Agenda item 24-13, special event application and waiver of fees. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Clerk Royal and Community Director Harrington, and to approve or not to approve the 2024 special event application, and to authorize, not authorize the waiver of in-kind fees in the amount not to exceed $29,571.18. Or, of course, the chair would be delighted to entertain any other motion that is appropriately worded.
Mayor, I'll move the motion to acknowledge, approve, and to authorize, with the exception of removing the Pride event until additional information is presented in March.
Okay, that motion is in order. The clerk did confirm with me that will change the not to exceed amount, and Clerk Royal can correct me if I'm wrong. That'll change the not to exceed amount to $29,180.91. Is that correct, ma'am? Very good. It's been properly moved by Gearboss. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. Again, we had a work meeting on this in advance of tonight's meeting, but City Manager O'Toole or Clerk Royal, do you care to make any obligatory comments for the public record?
No, just that generally there's support for all events. We just need a little additional information on one particular event moving forward, and there was consensus from our staff that we can gather that information and have it ready with the organizers by a March meeting.
Very good. Okay. Clerk Royal, anything you'd like to add for the record? No? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, thank you for chairing the work meeting in my absence. Is there any additional questions or comments from the dais? I'll start with Councilmember Rice and then transition to Councilmember Harmont.
I just want to say, for the record, that I will be voting no on this, though I do understand all of my colleagues' hesitations with approving the Pride event at a later date. I feel comfortable with it, so I just wanted to make that statement so that my colleagues know that I do hear them, but will continue to vote as I wish.
Very good. Please.
Yes, hi. I just had one comment to make. I too support this initiative. I do want to make the comment about, as it pertains to the recycling and trash guidelines, that it is consistently adhered across all of the events and all the vendors, and I feel very strongly about that. So I just wanted to state that.
Very good. Appreciate that. Councilmember Seal, before we vote.
I would also throw my same vote behind Councilwoman Harmont's idea about the recycling plans that are necessary if we're going to move forward into the future for our city, our state, and our world.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. So just for clarifications, these are still just guidelines?
Correct, but
We suggest,
yes.
but we are not forcing them upon
No.
any of our...
No, but we've been very successful in getting voluntary compliance.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any additional comments from the dais? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just again, I want to reiterate the reason why I'm asking for a postponement on the Pride one is I'm concerned with security, location, and then, of course, finding what the support will be for it. I think it'll be a great event. I'm just that this is a very interesting election year and other issues that have been going on. I want to make sure that it is, above all, a safe and fun event for our community.
Very good. If there's no additional discussion or comments, we do have a motion on the floor moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge, to approve, and to authorize removing the DEI Pride event until a later date, which changes the dollar amount to $29,180.91. Excuse you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, and the motion carries 6-1. We transition now to the discussion portion of agenda, and I'll start this evening to my left and end to my right, so I'll begin with Harmount and end with Lesh. Councilmember, any reports or announcements that you'd like to share at this time?
Oh, I do not, sorry.
Okay, no, it's fine. Councilmember Rice?
No additional reports, thanks.
Councilmember Gearbaugh?
I just want to mention our Planning Commission meeting to discuss the expansions that are going to occur at Liebherr and at Condant. Looking forward to it. I believe a couple items that brought up by council, or by the commission, I should say, address some of the things that we've been looking forward in terms of our new engineering requirements and guidelines, hopefully with the idea of closed loops and some of those other things occurring. And that was a welcome idea of doing that. And then also, this Friday, we will meet with our wastewater treatment plant task force, and we'll discuss the recent event that occurred with the, almost 10 million gallons of water running through our wastewater treatment plant, and then kind of getting a background on what caused it and what we can do to prevent it in the future.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, any reports, commission reports or other announcements?
No, most of my boards are meeting in the near future, including Fire Board, which will be meeting on Wednesday. That's at 6 p.m. at the firehouse. That meeting is also open to the public, like our city council meetings. Urban County will be meeting later in the month also.
Very good. Mr. Seal?
Cemetery Board met on Thursday, the 25th of January. We did discuss several items, but there's nothing really very new in on the horizon. Hopefully, we'll start work around the first of the year the first of the summer to paint the inside of the mausoleum to make that more presentable and hopefully encourage more people to locate niches there if they so desire. And then also we talked about the retaining wall along Michigan Avenue. Hopefully work will start there once weather breaks and the weight limits are up for the roads.
Very good. Councilmember Lesh, any reports or announcements?
Just to let everybody know that the Arts and Culture Committee did talk about Jazz in the Park, and letters have gone out to potential sponsors, so I think they're in a good place this year to get hopefully some money.
And Mr. Lesh, as I confirmed with you last week, due to the appointment of Miss Jackie Jacobs to the Parks Commission this evening, you are officially relieved. I say that lightly and politely, of course, as your duties as a community member or a citizen at large on the Parks Commission. So we thank you for your service, and of course, you're still passionate about the parks. Please stay involved, but we now have a full commission, which is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's transition then to downtown parking enforcement. City Manager O'Toole, would you like to begin?
Certainly. So if you recall, before the end of the calendar year, we had a few discussions about downtown paid parking. We outlined a proposal, what it could potentially look like, the impact on residents and businesses. The consensus, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, that staff perceived at that time was there did not appear to be an appetite from council to moving forward with one of those proposals. So we've continued to explore other opportunities related to downtown parking enforcement. Obviously, it gets trickier when you don't have those dedicated paid parking systems because they're really self-policing in terms of having the meters installed. But we wanted to bring this discussion item before you all, continue to gather feedback. One, certainly, do you feel that there is a parking problem or a space problem in our downtown parking lots, as well as any other concerns you might have about downtown parking?
I can speak for myself. Your conclusion may be correct that there is not appetite from this body to proceed with paid parking. I have not had individual conversations with my colleagues, so I can't come to that same conclusion. Again, I can speak for myself, and at this juncture, I would personally not be in favor of moving forward with paid parking downtown. I am aware that there are key times of the day and week where our parking lots are full. And we do have some habitual offenders who remain in the lots for extended periods of time and thereby exacerbate the problem. So I would be willing to look at strategies and approaches to mitigate that. I'm also keenly aware, I was thinking about this in advance of tonight's meeting, that two of my colleagues, Councilmember Lesh and Councilmember Harmont, have not been privy to all of the conversations, discussions that this body, staff, and external stakeholders have had regarding the issue. So as a professional courtesy to them, and if there was consensus from the dais, I would be amenable to having a work meeting or some sort of discussion to delve a little bit deeper into the issue. Goal being, I want to make sure everybody is very comfortable before we develop consensus or take any formal action. If that makes sense. Let me start again to my left and to my right. Any comments or questions at this time, Councilmember Harmon?
I do not have any questions. I do not support paid parking downtown. Just want to be clear on that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rice?
I don't have any additional questions. What I would like to state, again, is that I think this is more of a communication issue. I think if we can do some outreach to our business owners and to the tenants of the downtown area, explain to them where we would prefer for them to park, maybe look into some sort of incentive program or something along those lines. But I've had enough conversations with business owners and the community that I will not support a downtown paid parking structure.
Okay. Councilmember Gearbaugh?
I agree with the mayor. There is some other adjustments I think that could happen. One of the things, though, I don't agree on having full-blown paid parking, but I do believe that at some point we need to have some type of permit parking. It's this idea that potentially we're seeing cars park in a spot or something in some of our long-term spots that don't move for days on end. And it's more my concern that we need to figure out a way to really effectively handle not only long-term parking concerns like that, but also illegal parking, namely fire lanes, delivery. I've seen that all uptown. And I think that's a concern where I've seen a lot of issues where we have safety concerns where cars are parking in certain alleys and areas that should not be there. And I don't know what kind of enforcement, except when people call, it doesn't happen on a daily basis. So whatever we can do to treat that. The other aspect is I would like to look at clearly is putting on some time limit, because there is. I know of one specific white truck that parks uptown in the same space or two spaces every single day of the week. And that needs to be addressed. And I don't know if we can record it. I don't know if you can identify it or whatever, but if we use some kind of software or something, I think we've talked about is to potentially do that. But the long-term, pen fell apart. My long-term concern about permit parking is just that. I mean, if we want to make sure that, you know, we have parking for our employees and some of that, there has to be some reasonable expectation to have some money generation for that, because we can't afford to continue putting all the money in uptown without subsidizing some other, or losing some other aspect of the city,
So I do have, Chief Radzik and I did look very high level at other enforcement mechanisms that could potentially exist. We do have existing regulations that limit downtown parking. What we're lacking is the enforcement tools to then actually ensure that those limits are adhered to. Chief Radzik, I don't know if you want to talk high level about that.
I know everyone at the dais is familiar with this, but I think it bears mentioning again for the public's benefit. Our previous approach under Chief Hart was to chalk tires and thereby issue tickets for vehicles that had stayed beyond the scope of our ordinance, our policy. And we're no longer able to do that because of a court ruling.
Correct. That was deemed illegal search and seizure by the courts and is no longer permitted practice.
Which is asinine, but is what it is. Please.
Amen.
Right,
Speak the
so
truth.
as explained, it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment to chalk tires. So I was asked to look at different alternatives. Just on the surface, obviously we can do what we call digital chalking, which requires software and computers like license plate readers. in a patrol vehicle where it takes a picture. It can actually even be geofenced to even loading zones, you know, when there's trucks that are parked. If it's past the 15 minutes, it'll pick up on that. Again, it's hard for me to come up with a solution because I'm not exactly sure what the issue is. When I listen to other people, you know, asking them the questions, if there is a problem with downtown parking, a lot of it is workers that are employed downtown at some of the restaurants or tenants that live in apartments above some of the restaurants. So, I mean, my suggestion at first would probably be, I kind of think that's a management issue, right? To make it very clear where you should be parking and, you know, if it calls for a permit, you know, where even the city with certain designated parking spots for these people, that they would have to pay for a permit to park there. And that would be something that, you know, we could check. But again, we can't issue or enforce that without some of this equipment to measure how long somebody is.
And what would be the cost of doing, I mean, what do you have any estimates of that?
Well, the one company that I looked at, it was $60,000 just to outfit the vehicle, and then $12,000 every year for warranty and software upgrades and such. But a lot of that comes with the paid parking. So I just kind of wanted to get the consensus, because I can put more work into looking at this and other vendors, if this is, you know, where you want to go with it. But as you know, some of these vendors won't even sit down and come up with a plan unless you're committed to maybe, you know, being more interested in actually making this purchase. Or
I think some of those one-time expenses, there is funding from that through either TIFA or whatever. It's the ongoing operational costs.
Right.
But if that could be minimized, I mean, my goal is not to have 24/7 enforcement, but it's during those key times when everybody keeps saying, we can't find a place to park, or especially when, you know, people are parking in the same spot, and they're the worst abusers, and it's like, it needs to be
Right.
enforced, so.
And you are correct. I mean, we pretty much enforce that. It's complaint-driven right now because we can't chalk tires and, you know.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Gearba, anything else?
No, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. There was probably a couple of months now, I had an opportunity, along with Mr. Gearba, Mayor, and City Manager, I believe, and Mr. Harrington, to attend a downtown business owner meeting about paid parking. And the general consensus was that they really were not in favor of it at this point. There's just too many moving pieces, and when you start to do the math, I mean, you'd have to issue a lot of tickets to recoup any of the cost of the service. And so looking at different ways, as Mr. Gearba had indicated, of how we can motivate people to not stay so long in certain spots, in key spots, I think is the thing. And I know for the city, what I understand it to be is that one of our biggest things is that we need to maintain the parking lots. And at that point, what I do agree with, I think Mr. Gearba had mentioned, which is looking at like tenant permits and utilizing those dollars for upkeep, and then sort of understanding that each unit has, you know, say 2 parking spots, and then there's a designated area that is strictly for those people, and understanding how that's going to work. I also think that we need to get people, we still have to educate people as to where we have parking. You know, on Saturdays, we still get a great turnout, even though the parking lot behind Benny's is closed. So people are parking other places, and we just need to get them to understand that. That being said, there are a couple of things that I really wish that we could focus on as far as parking, and my number one thing is handicap parking. I don't feel as though what we have right now is adequate, especially in proximity to the businesses, and how to access those. I mean, for the parking, for handicap parking behind Max, I mean, you have a really long way to go in order to get up to Michigan Avenue. And I just think that we've got to look at some other options for that going forward. The other thing that I've said before, and I'll continue to say, is that I think we need to reassess the turn-in on the side of Benny's, and whether that we have oncoming traffic. I deal with it every single day. People that are in a turn lane, that are incorrectly in a turn lane trying to access that parking lot, that entrance, and they're crossing across 2 lanes of very active traffic, as well as blocking a turn lane. And I think we just need to look at that and sort of see what we can do. And the other piece is understanding the signage that we have in some of our parking lot is all-day parking. What does all-day mean? Does that mean just all, like, daylight day? Does that mean 24-hour parking? Because people sort of have their own assumptions, and I don't think it was what we initially intended for those areas. And so maybe we just need to help self-correct ourselves a little bit and understand what we can do. But at this time, I don't see that we can justify paid parking. I think that, we don't have the police staff to monitor it to begin with. And then we're talking about, would we hire somebody to monitor parking? So not only do you have a parking expense, but then you have an employee, expense. And I just don't see that we can generate to offset those type of costs at this point.
Very good. Mr. Seo, any thoughts or comments?
I have a lot of thoughts. There are very few cities anymore where you can go and park in a commercial district without having to pay something for parking, or to have your time limited in a particularly desirable parking area. We do not have the people to enforce time limits on parking, and nor do we have the capability at this point in time because of the strictures placed on us by our all-knowing courts. So it becomes a very difficult question. I think that for the time being, we probably should let the issue rest as it is and continue to have Chief Radzik look into any possible solutions to the problem of how do we enforce it adequately with the force that we have.
Very good. Thank you. It's clear. Mr. Lesh, any comments or thoughts?
Just that at this juncture in time, I would probably be against any paid parking. Once the city redevelops downtown, it has the new future, we can reexamine it, but at this point, no.
Seems like consensus is pretty clear. There also seems to be a desire to do some additional education and outreach, not only to businesses, but property owners, to explore some new technology and the development of some additional permits for long-term parking downtown. So do you have any questions for us, or do you feel comfortable proceeding with your staff and reporting back at the appropriate time?
No, I think I have what I need.
Very good. Chief Radzik, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last item, consideration of council subcommittees. This is an item that I addressed in my January State of the City address. I've subsequently had an opportunity to speak to the city manager, the city treasurer, and the community development director about the matter. I discussed it with Mayor Pro Tem and City Manager O'Toole at this past Wednesday's agenda-setting meeting. I'm of the opinion that today, in 2024, Saline City Council would benefit from the establishment of subcommittees. Many municipalities, cities specifically, have subcommittees. Finance and policy are the most common. Saline Area Schools has both a finance and policy subcommittee. And I think, a finance committee could help with reviewing the initial draft of the budget and reviewing the initial submittal from our auditors. A policy committee, in my judgment, would replace the code review committee and would be comprised either exclusively or mainly of council members that would review, evaluate, and write policies for the entire council to review. From the research that I've done, what my initial thought or recommendation would be is to simply divide the council in half, with 3 members serving on finance, 3 members serving on policy. The mayor would be an ex officio on both bodies, meaning he or she could attend, but they don't have a vote, and they don't chair the meetings. The individual subcommittees would be chaired by members of council. From the conversations I've had with the city manager, I don't envision these groups meeting monthly, probably between 4 and 6 times a year, or as needed. Again, I'm just of the opinion that today in 2024, the manner in which we conduct business should reflect the times. And I think as a city of 10,000 with a growing, diverse economy, a large industrial base, this community would benefit from the establishment of subcommittees. So the question I'm posing tonight is not your agreement that we should establish the subcommittees, but rather if the city manager and her staff can move forward and sort of develop a scope and a vision and then report back to us. So I would welcome your comments at this time. And again, I'll start to my left and to my right. Councilmember Harmount.
I guess I would have some questions about the scope and how much time would be and what the outcome or what the output would be of those committees would be something I'd be interested in.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Rice?
Question, do you envision this sort of like the, like alternate Mondays when we don't have council meetings that these committees would meet? Because we're all pretty stretched thin through other evenings and other commissions and boards throughout the week.
I think Mondays make the most sense. Again, I would reiterate, I don't envision either of these groups meeting monthly.
Sure.
Policy would probably end up meeting a bit more than finance, probably in the six times a year. Finance, I see probably more in the 4 to 6 times per year. So a short answer to your question is Mondays would be best, but I want to temper any concern that these are not groups that I think will be meeting bi-monthly or even monthly.
And how do you envision how you will divide us? By expertise, by interest, by?
Well, I think moving forward, it would be done in conjunction with the annual appointments to boards and commissions that is done, which is done at the first meeting of the calendar year. And so it would be based on interviewing each of you, determining your interest and skill set. Obviously, there's some people here who have a lot of financial acumen. It would make sense for them to be on finance.
Yep.
There's many of you who have worked on code review and have experience writing and developing policy, and so that skill set would naturally gravitate towards a policy subcommittee. But it would be based on a conversation that the mayor would have with each of you, likely in December, and then appointments made in January.
I think this is a great idea. I think using our expertise in smaller settings and being able to focus on things and then bring that information either back to the rest of council or bring it to make policies throughout the city, I think that would be super helpful. I think one of the things that I struggle with as a council member is the absorption of all of the information and really nailing down, grabbing all of the content that I can and nailing down all of the answers that I can get answered. And I think if we focus, these are the two biggest things we do as council members, right? We make sure that the city finances are straight, and we make sure that we're putting forth policy for all of our community members. And I think that if we can use our strengths to kind of divide and conquer, I think that would be super beneficial to the community and to the citizens of Saline, as well as to us as council members.
Very good.
I'm in support.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. And I should note, too, one of the things that will need to be vetted if there is consensus to develop a scope and a structure for this is whether these entities are just limited to council members or whether they may include some private citizens as well. From my research, I've seen both models work, although I guess my preference would be if we include private citizens, I'd still want it to be majority council. So 3 council and maybe 2 individuals from outside of the organization. But that's something that would need to be, evaluated and subsequently debated before we decided to move forward. Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Yeah, I initially recommended doing this because having served both on the policy committee but also understanding the finance piece, it was becoming clear that we really needed to get a better focus on finance and how we explain it to all of us on this party. I mean, at times I've kind of served in that role, but it became more a clear aspect that I believe that our finance person needs to have more bounce off not only members of council, but 1 or 2 people from the public that actually specialize in it. We've seen this worked really well in our charter task force, but it became more clear that I think it needs to be a regular ongoing thing because there are a number of things that require our expertise in making that decision, which is policy. We develop policy, but we also look at things and understand it more than I think the general public does. Having served on the task force for policy review and everything, it became clear that even they felt that it was overstepping their authority and what there is. I believe that the finance and whatever we do in the code one could bring individuals in and be as expertise, but that it wouldn't necessarily be spinning wheels. We would have the more direction by the staff person that's assigned to it, and in this case, Mr. Harrington and Ms. Cole would be the experts that we then get bounced off, and then we can kind of keep it on track, make it happen faster. So we've had some issues with people being able to meet and that type of thing. So for me, I think it's great, and it'll provide that kind of plug that I hope that will help even bring up issues before they get to the council chamber and be able to be better vetted. And I hope that that's the same feeling that the city manager has and feels strongly on that too. So,
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I should add as well, around the holidays, I did meet with the chair of our code review committee, former council member Tahar, and indicated that I was going to be making a statement in my State of the City address about forming two council subcommittees, a policy and a finance, and if they were to be established, if being the operative word, it would negate the need for a code review committee. So that seed has been planted. I didn't want anybody to be caught off guard, and it's not anything personal to the members of the code review committee. I think they've done an excellent job. I just think it makes more sense to make that a council function, a council subcommittee, as opposed to a standalone committee within our municipal portfolio. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, any thoughts?
Thank you. I agree that I think these could be beneficial to the council and just to the process. With code review, they have, the people that have stepped up to serve on code review have done an incredible job, and we're very grateful. But I think sometimes we're asking them to do something that's well beyond their realm. We have the details, we know what we're trying to get to, and sometimes they're starting from 3 steps behind that, and it's getting so caught up that sometimes by the time it gets back to us, it's something completely different. And so I think understanding what it is we want and establishing that it's not just the process, but it's the flow of how it's going to work would be very beneficial in getting things done in a timely manner, and just understanding, because sometimes it does. For example, I know when we were working through rental inspection, I believe, there were some of these things that were just, they did not have the background on it. And to bring people up to speed, it was taking several meetings. And if you're only meeting once a month, you're talking about months and months delays for getting back to us. And then if they come back to us and all of a sudden we're like, well, that actually wasn't what we meant, because we weren't clear in what we provided to them, then it starts that whole wheel moving back again. And so I think this could be a great avenue for us, and definitely having community input and having those with the expertise and the passion will be beneficial to the city.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Seo, any thoughts?
In my experience, a lot more can get done in a small group than in the larger body of council as a whole. So I think it has some real merit to work out in smaller groups the ideas, the core of the ideas, bring them back to council with a recommendation.
Okay. Yep, that's clear. Appreciate it. Mr. Lesh?
Having spent some time on the Saline School Board, I'm familiar with both groups, and I know that the policy committee does actually meet more frequently than the finance committee, as you had said, and the finance, again, is mostly interested in the budgeting. So I think the model works very well at the school, so I think it would work very well at the city level also.
I think we have our consensus.
Yes.
So you can work with, please work with staff to develop some scope and some guidelines. And do you envision that you could have something for this body to digest and consider in March? Is that realistic?
I think that's realistic.
Okay, very good. Excellent. I appreciate it. And thank you all for your comments and feedback. If there's nothing further to be brought, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just have one other thing and I appreciate how you just ended the last statement, because one of the things that I'd like this body to consider is that when we sort of push stuff over to the staff side or whatever it is, that we sort of attach a date certain to it, so that we have some sort of mechanism of diarying it to say, oh yeah, we're following up on this in 3 months. Because in 3 months, the world could be on fire, and then we forget about it, and then all of a sudden, it's not till there's an issue that, oh yeah, weren't we supposed to do that? So I think it could keep us all on task and keep us from asking, is that ready yet? Is it ready yet? When are we doing that? So I think that if we can start to attach a date, and it doesn't have to be a firm date, but just a time frame, a window of we expect to have this in, in the first part of a month or, the second quarter, something like that, so that we can kind of follow it through the process.
Yeah, to be a little bit more specific, unless you object, City Manager O'Toole, I guess I would be looking for something for this body to consider and discuss no later than our second meeting in March, which is the 18th.
Absolutely.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. We come now to the second public comment period, friends. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, council friends, my name is Chang Ming Fan. As you all know, I like to continue the conversation about SALT initiative, Saline Area Light Tower. There are quite a lot of development from the government funding, which is I cannot catch up. Also, promoted me to do more work, more preparation in order to present to the public about the initiative. I will call not just SALT, S-A-L-T, but it's ALT, Area Light Tower. So I prefer to have the SALT initiative to let Saline lead. That's another story. I was sick after I came back from Detroit, in middle of Detroit River, an island of Belle Isle, with JP. We do the survey to see if that's possible. After we succeed, we can extend the SALT initiative to another one, 1.5 mile high, DEALT, D-E-A-L-T. So I couldn't attend the strategic meeting. I really like to know, do we have the language in our strategic plan for Saline to give this whole state, whole the United States, an example to see that we can do this, starting from Saline, the concept if we have consensus or common sense in Saline, other cities should do in the Great Lake area, especially Southeast Michigan, Detroit, and other states. So the point I want to make is that we have trouble. One is that the money is farther down, raised to the bottom to help the basic people who can create a new era. I would call that LIDA, low income, disadvantaged group. As you know that Justice 40 of the governor's plan, which is MHCP. I want to get into quick point is that program is great, but it's one thing is that profit organization belong to some, like TLW, Tiny Line World. We found that and built this company when the Gretchen was the mayor and Janet was at the, I would say the city, what is that, Main Street. And that time we formed this is the product we call that art, Tiny Light Art. But unfortunately, we couldn't get that unless we change the language. So I need to work with you. I need to work, and then Mr. CEO and the mayor, let's talk.
Thank you, Chang Ming.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate your comments. Are there any additional citizen comments from those in the audience this evening? I would defer to the city clerk. I believe we have at least one comment in which the individual or individuals would like their remarks read at this time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, you may begin when ready.
It says, hello, my name is Patricia Rabe. I live at 650 Maple Oaks Court. I would like to thank the city council and city staff for getting the crosswalk completed at the corner of Maple Road and Maple Oaks Court. The final pieces with the flashing lights and signs were installed today. They look very good. The Maple Oaks community thanks you for all for listening to our concerns and getting this project done sooner rather than later. We can't be sure, but wonder if it had anything to do with Zach Castor being Saline mayor for the day on Friday. The guy knows how to get things done. all kidding aside, thanks again for all you do for the city of Saline.
Very good. Thank you for that comment. And I understand that the residents were responsible for the treats this evening, is that correct? That was very generous and gracious. It wasn't necessary, but very much appreciated. And yes, to Ms. Raby's comments, I would say that Mayor Castor was instrumental in getting that done on Friday.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for your advocacy and support. And to Chang Ming, our next strategic planning session is scheduled for the 26th of February here at 4 p.m. The city manager can correct me if I'm wrong. The plan is not finalized. I suspect it'll take maybe 1 or 2 more sessions to get that document complete.
Correct, yeah, likely 2 sessions.
Okay, so we'll be meeting again in February and then likely again in probably March or April before the document is finished. Okay, we welcome you to attend those events.
Do we have any written thing the public can see? The community?
I don't know that we do at this juncture.
Other than the final mission, vision, and core values statement.
If you send me an email, I will get you the mission, vision, and core values statement that was developed, okay? Any additional citizen comments? The record will reflect there are none. Please note our upcoming meetings, and at this time, the chair would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn this regular meeting at 7:42.
I move to adjourn.
Moved by Harmount. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.